So we wanted to also kind of update everybody on like what our current progress is. So over the last 2 years, there's been a lot of things that we've been working on, and this is kind of like the things that are in progress are the things that we've been working on for the last 2 years, essentially. We've been pushing on this rework of the core framework at the not like kind of the high end API, but the core of it, the low level part of it. So this is the new native API that talks to native code in order to call all our dependencies. So for calling DirectX or DX12 and Vulkan and the new SDL integration and everything is all going through a native API. And that's been a core thing that we've been working on so that we have, so that we can basically work into the future with this shared core library. For a very long time, every platform had its own implementation of things. It's all at the C# level. Everything has to have C# wrappers. Was hard to maintain, so we've been ditching that, and this has been a core thing that we've been doing. It's a slow, painful process, but once we get to the end of this, we're going to be really set up to handle any new platforms and expand easily, and we're going to share a lot of code. So that's been a core thing over the last year, or 2 years essentially. The Vulkan and DX12, we're finally seeing the end of the tunnel on those things. I figure in the next couple months, we'll have these things to a very good preview state where people can actually use them and possibly ship games. And within the next 6 months, they should be rock solid and great for games. So that's been a very core thing. We're finally getting to the end of the road on that. I was just showing the new content builder. That's been stuff that Harry's been working on for the last 4 months. And then even before then, it was something he was thinking about and discussing with us. So it's been a long time project that's, getting to the first good release of this thing. It will ship with 3.8.5 in at least a preview mode, but we want to make sure that preview is very strong. It just works out of the box. No one has any trouble with it. And it's really strong. If preview does not mean it's broken. It just means that we haven't tested it fully and you might run into bugs, but the core stuff will work. We've been doing a push on refreshing consoles. That's been a big deal. We have essentially 5 console platforms. So that's a lot of console platforms to maintain. They have, grown stale in the past, so we're refreshing all those things with using the new native API and making sure they're up to date, the latest SDKs and everything. I'm starting to figure out how we're going to continue to maintain them into the future and keep them up to date with SDK changes. There's a lot of infrastructure and work that has to be done there. But that's been a big push over the last couple of years, is refreshing all the consoles. You're starting to see the new starter kits. I guess we skipped something. One of the things, I think we talked about it last meeting or the meeting before last, is we're doing Kenny's FPS starter kit. That's something that we're working on now. There's a lot of questions to answer there, but we're starting work on that. So we're hoping that probably by next AMA we'll be able to start sharing the something that's a good starting point that people can start using, and it'll work the same way as the 3D platformer starter kit. It'll be released to patrons first, and then we'll do a bunch of work to improve it and add a bunch of core functionality to it so that when we release it, it's a pretty complete package that people can use as a starting point for FPS style games. So the new starter kits, we've been working a lot on that, and that includes also the Ascent demo stuff. A lot of work has gone into improving the docs and new tutorials. That's been a big push over the last 2 years. And we're doing a bigger push for social outreach. We started these open hour meetings. We've been pushing more content to YouTube and learning that, doing some YouTube shorts, doing some more video content. We're trying to really up our game in that in order to just have visibility and reach audience and get more users interested in using MonoGame. So that's been a big push for us. So then the question is, what's next at this point? With this roadmap getting close to being done, we need to start working on what's next after this. So as we roll off Vulkan and DX12, I figure that we're going to probably look at other platforms or other APIs potentially. Simon, you can jump to the next page. We're going to probably look at new platforms. That's something that's there. I can't say anything officially at the moment, but I can say that if you watch the Nintendo Direct from last Friday, Stardew Valley for Switch 2 was announced. That's all I can say about that. I think it's time that we start looking at our mobile releases and seeing how that fits in with everything that we're doing with the new low-level native pipeline. There's been a lot of talk about improving our effects pipeline in general, especially like adding in geometry shaders, adding in whole shaders, domain shaders, adding in and even compute. That's something that we want to do. It's high on my list once we get all these other little things kind of wrapped up. So that's another big push that I hope to begin, in the next year, hopefully early next year, so that we can get that all cleaned up, because the effect stuff that we have has worked, but it's very limiting to doing some high-end work. So we need to really improve that in order to really unlock stuff for MonoGame. And then runtime content building, that's kind of the content server and that, so that we can build content at runtime. There might be a specialization that we do here specifically for just building shaders at runtime that doesn't maybe involve the full pipeline, but is a simplification, so that at least for platforms that do support shader building at runtime, that we support that, in the content manager. Currently, the content manager does support like loading a PNG directly. If you just put a PNG in your content folder and don't run a pipeline build, and then go content manager dot load texture 2D, and then the name of the PNG without the PNG extension, it'll look for an XNB, and when it doesn't find the XNB, it says, well, let me see if there's an image here. Is there a PNG? Yes, load the PNG. So it currently does load content at runtime that is not compiled. That's a feature that we added a couple of months back. It's possible that we can do something similar for shaders specifically. So that gives anybody that really, 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 really does not want to mess with the content pipeline to basically have what they want, which is just load a shader just from source at runtime. It'll build it for you. That said, there's no guarantees that will be fast, and there's no guarantees that it will work on all platforms. It'll probably only work on PC platforms and maybe mobile if we decide to support it there, but it would be highly not recommended. Shaders can be very complex, and the more complex the shader gets, it's funny, I saw something today from that was posted, an update to another engine, and they said, shaders are little programs. It's like, that is a complete lie. Shaders are not little programs. Some shaders are hundreds of lines of code. They're big programs, and they're complex, and compiling them is slow, and optimizing them is slow. So that's the fundamental fallacy that people have. It's like, shaders are little programs, and they're fast to build, and you can just build them at runtime. This is why when some games start up, they have a progress bar for compiling shaders. It's like they took the compiling process and made it an inconvenience to the player to have to wait for them instead of building them ahead of time. And that's why the content pipeline exists, is to build that content ahead of time. You wouldn't want it to like, I'm converting our video, I'm building video content when the game starts. It's like, you build stuff offline that can be built offline, and that's what the content pipeline's for. But some people really want runtime building content, and a lot of it's for convenience during development. So we want to provide all those options, and that's part of what we're thinking about here with extending the content building. And this is just the start of ideas for the next phase of things here coming into next year. We're definitely willing to hear other ideas of things that we should do. But after all this, I think, is when we're really going to start digging into what's a next gen API going to be like, that takes advantage of threaded rendering and things like that we currently can't do the way that it is. And all these steps will be a big, that it'll be a big step towards getting that done. So that's basically where we're at.